Welcome to Baker Dave Presents. We're here once again in the Morgan Hall Kitchens at Temple University. It's a working kitchen, so you might hear some noises, there might be some things going on in the background. Today's show, we have a special guest. We have Jonathan Latko. He is the Director of Computer Recycling Services here at Temple University, and he's brought with him his recipe for mac and cheese coming right up. I'd like to welcome to the kitchen Jonathan Latko. You're the Director of Computer Recycling Services.
Correct, Temple University.
I love how there's like a million titles for everybody. It's awesome.
16 years. Titles get longer as you stay.
Do they get longer?
So.
Is that instead of a bonus?
Yes, exactly. That is the bonus.
The bonus is an extra title.
Other duties is assigned and extra titles.
Awesome. So today we're making
baked macaroni and cheese. This is Mom's favorite.
Yeah, I know. She used to invite me over all the time.
Hey,
yeah, it was awesome.
This thing is still the test of time. We've grown up on it. I think my grandmother used to make it. It's been passed along, and now when we have family functions with our family expanding, it's like what Mom brings to the table.
You know what's great about these recipes is that your mom or whoever brings it, and you're like, oh my God, that's so awesome. You must have spent hours, blah, blah, blah. But you're going to make it today and realize that it's not much more difficult than making the box mix.
Probably not.
Right. So you don't need to make a box mix. You know what I'm saying? Like this stuff it's not that hard. It's fairly straightforward, and I have a few tips that'll hopefully make it go a little easier.
Right.
So before we get too involved in learning about you, I want to get the milk going because it takes a while to heat up. You know
Not
what
a problem. Okay.
But what are some good stories about this macaroni and cheese? Like what makes this macaroni and cheese?
I think one of the best stories is as you grow up and you bring women into the house, and we were all boys growing up, we talk about this macaroni and cheese. And when people view as macaroni and cheese, it's typically, the orange stuff out of a box, and you make it in a couple minutes. But then when they try it, they're like, wow, this is a little bit different. And,
a little bit creamier.
A little creamier.
More delicious.
It's
I will tell you, I had to make a slight change because I didn't have the one ingredient. So we're using orange cheese instead of white cheese. I apologize.
Not a problem. It may look a bit different. And then, it's unique to have the American cheese sitting on top. And
I think that only adds to the creaminess, right?
It does. And sometimes, so we tried to pass the recipe on to my sister-in-law and my wife.
Did it work?
Well, it's funny because for my mom, you ask her, and she just makes it.
Right. She doesn't probably recipe.
She doesn't know it's 4 cups of milk. She just, pours
until it's done, right?
It's the right
that looks
amount.
about the right height. And
yeah. So it's pretty amazing when you ask her to write it down. And
but you gave me. It's funny because when you sent me the recipe, you sent it saying, we don't really follow a recipe, and then you gave me a recipe. Like it actually has all the. So you must have figured it out.
So when I did that, you say, "I never measure" is my mom's first line.
Right, exactly. So. But here's a rough estimate.
So I think she estimated it at some point.
Which is perfect. So did you get any extra dates with this? Like, was this macaroni and cheese? Like, holy cow, I gotta keep dating this guy because of the macaroni and cheese.
It's been interesting to see that my sister-in-law and my wife tried to recreate it in their own fashion.
And they've succeed wildly.
Watch
what you say
there's
here.
Different versions of it. I'll say that. Mom's love is the big.
So yeah, you can't badmouth either one of them. They're obviously both delicious and
right.
in their own way, right?
And my wife is a connoisseur of mac and cheese. She loves mac and cheese in some odd way.
Well, there's so many weird, different ways to make it. I noticed you don't have eggs in it.
No.
A lot of mac and cheese has eggs in it. That's part of the thickener. A lot of mac and cheese start as a bechamel, so to speak. So it starts off with a roux. It starts off with flour and butter.
Right.
And that ends up being your thickening agent.
Right.
You don't have that either.
No.
You have a little bit of cornstarch that you
Right.
thicken up with it. But other than that, it just all comes together. It's more like a cream sauce that's cheese flavored.
Right.
Right?
That's probably the best way to describe it. It's good, whatever it is.
Whatever it is, it's good. Well, I'm glad because that's what we have.
So a funny story about the mac and cheese. My wife and I live in Camden, and we've always joked.
New Jersey?
New Jersey, yeah, which for me is an amazing place. It's my family.
Awesome.
Generationally has been there since 1860.
Holy cow!
So,
they settled there?
Yeah, so,
came in on the boat.
Germans in off the boat, and
you don't think of Germans and mac and cheese. I'm
no,
not gonna lie.
then my mom's side's German and Finnish, and then go down the line, we become mutts along the way.
You become Americans.
American is basically what it is.
Right, which is fine. We're all Americans.
And then you fast forward today, and there's a ton of ethnicities in the city.
In
Dominicans, yeah, in Camden, Dominicans and Puerto Ricans.
You live there still today?
I live there, yeah. So I moved back. I was born there and moved back. And it's a little bit different than when my parents grew up, but
Right.
It's still amazing food. And there's like still this ethnic bond of amazing food throughout the city. So I love food, like in the weirdest way.
And what's so weird about loving food? I love food too.
Yeah, I don't know.
Does that make me weird? Like, what's
yeah.
going on?
So
Clearly, I love food.
I spent a year in Bologna, which in my Italian side of my family is a pretty big deal because El Gordo is like their nickname.
Okay.
They're in the Po Valley, which is kind of unusual. There's like this river that goes through there, so it allows them to have beef. So bolognese sauce.
So they wouldn't normally have beef if there's no river?
In Italian, well, yeah, because they couldn't feed the
They'd
cattle.
have no
They're
grazing.
eating grass.
Look at that, man.
Yeah.
We're learning something new here. Like
So
every.
bolognese sauce was a pretty
Right,
big deal
right.
because there's meat in
There's
the
meat in
sauce.
it, exactly.
Which is unusual. So I got to spend a year there, and then like you just kind of learn a whole new different thing about food.
I don't think they'd appreciate the mac and cheese
Nah, a little bit different.
over
Yeah.
there. I mean, it's their pasta, I suppose, but I just.
Right. So
Okay,
there's that
so-
pasta base.
Now we're getting out of control.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that.
So-
We're just going to take it off for a second. Sometimes the milk does that. Okay, so one of the things that why don't you explain how you do it first,
Right. So basically, we just kind of boil the 4 cups of milk.
which we have right now.
And then we begin to kind of put in these different pieces. And the cornstarch is last, but she says salt and pepper to taste, melt the butter. So butter would go in next.
So I want to mention 2 things
Yeah.
from a chef perspective.
Okay.
The salt, you want to be careful about the salt
Yeah.
because your cheese is going to add salt
So is
and
the
your
butter.
is going to add salt.
Correct.
So if you add too much salt thinking that it's good right now, it ends up being too much.
Sure.
This is going to sound ridiculous,
Yeah.
but when I made it, I actually, because I like the idea of adding the cheese off the heat,
Okay.
is I added the cornstarch in with the milk first.
Okay.
And then when you pull it off, add the other stuff to it, type of thing. Like I actually put the butter in
Yep.
with the milk, right?
Yep. So that will melt pretty straightforward.
Right. So that's not too bad. And then I made a slurry
Okay.
out of this. I'm hoping I'm not like upsetting you too
No,
much.
that's fine.
So you add a little bit of water to your cornstarch, just so it mixes better. Because if you
Sure.
just add cornstarch straight in and it hits the heat, it'll sometimes will start to set up before it even gets mixed in. And do you have any trouble with it burning when you make it? If you're on the
Look,
stove?
Mom's still around, so Mom's the primary maker.
So
of
you
this
don't
piece.
make it?
I don't make it on a regular
But let's just
basis.
say you did
We're
make it.
starting
Do you
to.
think you would have trouble burning it sometimes?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
You'd have to pay attention and be ready, because I mean, obviously, we just boiled the milk over already.
Right. So by doing it this way,
Okay.
you're less likely to burn the cheese
Okay.
part of it. So we've got the milk and stuff in there, and I'm adding the cornstarch in at this point. And if you want to add some salt and pepper,
Sure.
like I said, not too much, just a little pinch. And then,
My mom's famous for liking pepper.
oh, well then, extra pepper for Mom. Holy cow, like extra pepper. All right, so at this point, you've added the starch. So the heat's going to react to the starch, and it's going to start to thicken this a little bit.
Right.
But you don't want that starchy flavor, right?
No.
So you're going to cook it a little bit to cook out the starchy flavor.
Okay.
But what's great is that this isn't burning at this point. It's not, nothing's happening on the bottom of the
Sure.
pan,
Right.
right?
Correct.
The starch is getting cooked out. Everything's good like that. And the cheese will melt just from the residual heat from this. So as you can see, I turned the
Sure.
heat off. Now we can add our cheese.
This is a plethora of cheese.
A pound. It's a pound of
a
cheese.
pound of cheese.
For those that don't know what a plethora equals, it equals a pound. So we have a pound of noodles that we actually pre-did.
All right.
And so you can stir this. I feel like you're not doing anything.
fine.
So
No, it's fine.
let you get into that. And this way you don't have to worry about burning the cheese or anything, right?
I think that's a good.
Now, what I did do here, and this is just a little extra tip for whoever. Our cheese here happened to be a mild cheese. And I know in my household, that's all we ever have. We tend not to have sharp cheese.
Sure.
It's super important that you have a sharp cheese flavor because there's so much cream and milk in here that you need the sharpness of the sharper cheese to cut through and give you the cheesy flavor, right?
I agree.
So my trick on how to create that sharp flavor is to add a little Parmesan. So I add a couple tablespoons of Parmesan, and that way, that is a real pungent cheese, and it'll add like that sharp flavor, so you won't realize that you don't have a sharp cheese in there. Does that make sense?
That's it. Yeah. If I don't have sharp cheese now, I know what to do.
Awesome. So we actually, like I said, we I think we're good. Like, and this is the thing.
That's it.
Normally you would start, right? And you'd be like, oh crap, I can't walk away because it's going to burn and the bottom's going to burn. And you don't have to worry about that with this. That's like, I saw you like, you didn't want to give up the whisk.
Nah.
You know what I mean? Like,
That happens.
but this, it's not going to burn. Nothing's going to happen here. We are going to then take the noodles.
Sure.
We're just going to toss them in there, right?
That's fine. Yep. So this
And
is
then mix them up.
a pound of just straight.
So do you have any
noodles.
tricks when you cook your noodles?
So I put a little bit of salt in. From time to time, I may put some olive oil in. I don't think my mother does that, but that's just
Some
mine.
people are really averse to the whole oil noodle thing. Like, I don't mind because especially if you're having, this is a fatty sauce, so it doesn't
Right.
really matter. But I tend to, you were exactly right about the salt. So starch, which this is a starchy product, whether it's potatoes, whether it's pasta, starch eats salt.
Right.
So adding a little salt will help bring out some flavors and allow you to be able to taste that. And oil keeps it from boiling over.
Right.
So all those little bubbles,
Right.
they're full of starch and they keep sticking to each other and they boil up and then they come over the edge, right?
Got it.
When you add just like a tablespoon of oil or something, it
Wash
makes
it down.
all those bubbles slick and they can't stick together anymore, so they just keep rolling in on each other. So then it doesn't boil over. So that's a great little bonus
So,
tip.
question about salt. So, my understanding was flavor, and then also, I think water boils a little bit higher temperature with salt water than regular water. Is that, if that's true or not?
That is a good question.
That was the impression.
I feel, I'm going to
Just
go
a
with
question.
it. I'm going to say that, yeah, that's
I'm gonna go
exactly
with it too. So.
what happens. So why don't we mix this in? Why don't you
Sure.
tell me a little bit about like your recycling computers, because I absolutely
Yeah.
have no idea what that is.
So
Like when I grew up, it was like you just had a computer and you tossed it.
yeah, so this kind of goes back to my mom in some weird way. If you had to ask me what I wanted to be when I was growing up,
This is what you'd say, computer recycling.
a farmer. Like,
Oh, really?
I just enjoyed, like, my grandfather farmed in a little Victory Garden in his backyard. My parents
Camden?
were poor. Yeah, they were poor. They grew up. He was a World War II vet. My grandmother never worked a day in her life. She never drove. They just lived in this little house that he had built, and all their family lived
He
close
built
by.
his house.
And they lived close by, right? So
I feel like
his
that's
brother lived
that
next
time
door,
frame. I wish I could have
and
done
he had
that.
all these different things, and they used everything, right? So
Okay.
you go down their basement, like if there was a jar, he'd use it to separate screws, and he'd make like all these little things with it, like wood. He was like good with his hand. He made all these like wood things, like wood chimes and birds, and he'd paint them, and he loved this
Okay.
kind of stuff. So like I was always intrigued by that. Piece.
Building something, making something.
Yeah, but he always found a way to use things, right? So now it's a big deal. Sustainability and reuse and
Right.
recycling is a big deal, but like they grew up that way. They didn't know anything different.
This is, we're talking Depression era type.
So
Right, you
my
didn't-
mom is kind of the same way. Like, so people would get this great idea that you can use reuse plastic bags to like throw your trash out.
In the 80s, you might have been
My
called
mom
cheap.
was doing that in the 80s, and people were calling her cheap. And she was
Now
like,
you're
"No."
thrifty,
Yeah,
or
right.
this is recycling.
Yeah,
you're doing
it's-
everything the
yeah.
right way. This is awesome.
So like whatever that was instilled in me. So in some in that way.
What do you actually what
So
are you
we
recycling?
so there's an initiative. The state says you can't throw away your electronics.
Right. Is it
Right.
because of the batteries, I assume?
So batteries are one piece of it, but monitors were initially in 2003. Big screen type TVs and monitors, cathode ray tubes, have 8 to 10 pounds of lead
Holy cow.
in every monitor.
So you throw it away and then
So
you
you
have
can't
lead in
throw
your
it
water?
away. And Temple's
Like, that's-
trash either goes to an incinerator in Chester, Pennsylvania, or it gets landfilled.
Okay.
So there's big problems there: social injustices, environmental injustices, and then also air pollution, water pollution, things like that. So we're in charge.
I feel like, and I could be wrong,
Yeah.
but I feel like when we start creating these new devices, we should have that in mind when we invented them.
So it's called product stewardship.
Like, what do you do with it once it's done?
It's
You
called
know what I
product
mean?
stewardship. So it's basically looking at when you manufacture it, how do you
Right.
demanufacture it? And Apple's notorious for not doing that. They make it so proprietary that only Apple knows how to deal with that device.
Right.
HP was a big deal of that, but now it used to be like 27 to 30 different kinds of plastic in a printer. Now they've gotten down to like 3 or 4.
Okay, so it's
Because
easier to break down
It's easier
then.
to break down, and that product stewardship is a big piece of figuring out how to move things forward.
So you literally break down the plastics and
So
recycle individual parts.
So we basically were in charge. When they hired me, it was just me sitting in an office, and they said, "Figure out what to do with all this stuff." And we didn't know.
and we're
how much-
talking like tons at this point. Like,
we
how much
didn't
stuff
know.
are you talking?
So we move 90 tons a year at
Holy
the university. The university
cow.
has about 12,000.
That's just here?
Just here at Temple.
Just
we're,
at Temple.
We're a small city. We're a $1.2 billion organization.
Did you say 90 tons?
90 tons of equipment every year, and it's been going. I've been doing it for about 13 years now. So it's pretty.
That's a lot of tons.
It's a lot of tons. So it's about 3,500 computers a year plus everything
And are those
else.
there's Temple computers?
It's
or
all
they're-
Temple owned. It's not anything that anybody
This
else
isn't
has.
students. Or
No,
this
it's
isn't even
just
students'
Temple owned.
computers. This is literally just Temple's.
Yeah. So every 4 years we turn stuff over on average, 4 to 5 years. So every year I'm getting about a third to a quarter of
Like,
the
is any of
equipment.
it still good or usable? Is it
So
stuff
that's
like
what
you
we're
sell
doing.
like parts or something?
So in the beginning
or-
it was just get rid of it so we don't put it in a landfill.
Right.
I took it to a different level, made a business model out of it, and basically said we can refurbish maybe half of these computers and sell them back to students, faculty, and staff, or donate to
Right.
computer labs in the community.
I'm looking for a computer. I might need to talk to
Yeah.
you.
So it's a whole initiative. We run a small business.
Well, this is great because, much like
Yeah.
your computer recycling, I'm going to be, I'm using the ingredients I had here instead of exactly following your recipe.
And so I'll just make notes. So it looks more like, Velveeta.
It does
cheese
a little
right
bit,
now
a little bit. I'm not
than
going to lie.
Mom's mac and cheese put, the flavor and what
Well, I
you've
guess
done
we'll
to
see.
adjust the flavor,
Hopefully,
we'll find out.
hopefully like I said, you get the extra cheesiness. Now, do you spray your?
Yes. So,
Okay, so it doesn't stick and
we
stuff.
do have to, yeah. We usually use a glass pan.
Right,
casserole
like a
dish.
Pyrex or something,
exactly.
right? Well, I didn't have any of those here, so
That's
we're
fine.
recycling
We'll
and
use
using
what we
this
have. Use what we have.
this particular container, this hotel pan.
Right.
And literally, you just kind of dump it in.
Right.
And the other thing I noticed about yours is you didn't have breadcrumbs or anything on top.
No, nothing like that.
That's a big thing with.
It's the cheese. The cheese is that.
That's a big thing with mac and cheese, though. It's a lot of places, a lot of people have breadcrumbs
Right.
on top, but you put more cheese.
So the American cheese is the big piece. You basically cover this thing with American cheese. This is where the big
And I mean,
consistency.
this makes it American, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's the
this
deal.
is it.
So I have
mac and cheese.
exactly 10 slices of cheese here.
Okay.
Well, I wanted to make sure you
Yeah.
understood that I did follow the recipe that you'd given me.
It's whatever's in the refrigerator at the time is what works.
So
we'll
take
lay
some
these
of
things
it.
out. Yeah. Lay these.
You get some of that. And you literally just lay it over top. Is this
Yeah.
more of a decoration? Like, I feel like,
Oh, it's about the flavor, how you eat it in the end. So for me, everybody's got their own different way of eating it. And so for me,
you have a special way of eating it,
so
not just
each
with
of
a
these,
spoon or something?
Yeah. So each of these
Is a portion?
Are basically a portion. So I'll eat all the mac and cheese first, and I'll save the cheese for last on top.
The top cheese you
Yeah,
eat
I'll
at
eat
the
that
end.
last. Yeah, and that's just how I eat it.
That's
just
hysterical.
Some people just kind of cut into.
Does
the
it come
cheese.
off that easily? Like it's a total separate piece?
It's like a separate piece.
I feel like some of it would melt into it, no?
No, it doesn't happen that way.
The
It's
miracles
the magic of love.
Modern science, right?
Mom
I mean,
love there.
again, they probably just, yeah.
So we'll cut this in half.
It's not exactly the same size as your particular,
And we'll make it work.
So we're going to go ahead and put this in the oven. We're looking at like
So the exact time, I don't know.
It's about a
350,
half hour.
About a half hour.
until
But
until you
really-
get that beautiful
you
brownness
look at that
that you're
brownness
looking
on top of the cheese, and that's really what it
which
comes
is really
down to.
what's important.
So another piece back to my wife with the mac and cheese piece. So I love boating a little bit. We always talk about getting a boat.
And you make mac and cheese on your boat?
So we live in Camden, and there's a marina.
There's a river right there.
Yeah, so we walked down the marina, and we kind of joked before we got married, if we ever got a boat, we'd call it Ned Mac and Cheese.
Ned.
Ned Mac is Camden spelled backwards.
Oh.
So it'd be Ned Mac and Cheese.
You had to explain that to me, otherwise I would have
Yeah,
never got
and you're
that.
looking at me, staring through me there. But
I had no idea what
Yeah.
Ned Mac.
yeah, so
You know what I love? I love that you, and this is nothing against Camden, but
Right.
it's not often you find like beautiful stories of people and how much they love
Oh,
Camden.
yeah.
Like there's a lot of negative things that are associated with
Yeah,
Camden.
it's a
And
beautiful
for you to
place.
come on here talking about how great it is, like you make
Yeah.
me want to go hang out down there now. I'm not
it's
gonna lie.
amazing, and the future is amazing. So I'm raising my kids down there now. I got a 3.5-year-old.
Like I guess
a
I never thought of
2-year-old.
the ethnic diversity really affecting the food. Like you're
Oh,
really
it's amazing. It's crazy. I mean, you can go to Corinne's and get some Southern food.
Right.
It's like ridiculous. There's a cheesesteak place there that's famous.
and meanwhile, it's not probably overpriced, right? I
No.
mean, like the
Yeah,
same
it's pretty
restaurant
reasonable.
in
Yeah.
Philly might be a 4-star restaurant,
Exactly.
charging you a ton of money,
Exactly.
and you're getting these awesome flavors at
Yeah.
a discounted rate.
And the slight difference between Dominican to Colombian to Puerto Rican food, it's amazing. How
And you get the choice of
diverse.
all of them.
Yeah, right, and they're there, and so it's getting these little mom and pop shops to.
It's kind of like
Come
a big city mentality in a small town
right.
feel.
And the tough part is people have this mentality that it's so bad that
Right.
they won't
go
come.
there.
So there's been interesting. There's a professor at Rutgers. He went to Penn and now he teaches at Rutgers. He created this evening program. Once a month, they go to a different restaurant.
Oh, awesome.
And it's the dinner club. And basically, it got written about in one of the newspapers.
Right.
And now people like my parents who grew up in the city and have not come back for years,
Are starting to come back and go to
inundate
those
night.
restaurants.
There's 40, 50 people going to these little
Oh,
restaurants.
for the actual group.
For the group, and it keeps growing because people would not come in on their own and go to these restaurants.
But you feel a little safer in a group, obviously.
Right.
You know what I
So
mean?
they're in a group, and then they taste it, and then they feel a little bit more comfortable, and they would come back on their own.
And they would come back on their own, right.
Yeah. So we kind of like build.
Yeah,
this
I mean, I
community
don't-
piece by piece, and it's through food, and that's it.
And that's what- isn't it great?
It's what connects us all. Is food. And
Here
that's
we
what's
are.
pretty
It's connecting us
amazing.
right now, food.
Right.
Food's everywhere. So that's awesome.
And that's it. That's one thing you learn when you go to Italy and you live there for a little bit. It's like
How important food is?
Yeah, food is just a different mentality. Like we would eat food in a car here and drive.
That's
fast
all
food.
the time,
They would not even
unfortunately.
think that would be a travesty. They wouldn't even think about that. And
That would be
there'd
bad.
be something wrong with it. Like they literally take off the middle of the afternoon. They do their little nap. And
We
then
should
they have
totally
their
do that.
supper. And like they work a little bit in the morning. They work it in the evening. And then like it's just late. There's midday supper and then there's just late meal.
Do you feel like you should move to Italy?
It's yeah.
Would you retire
I went
there?
back. I went back for grad school. I
yeah?
lived in Rome for 2 months because I loved it so much my junior year. But I love Italy and
That's awesome, man. Yeah, like
just learn.
food is.
but
To
then
a lot of people, food is like it's the thing that makes you
Yeah.
fat, or it makes you thin,
right and
or
then,
it makes you.
my belly's growing a little
Do
bit.
you know what I
bigger
mean?
over
But to
time.
think of it as also the thing that brings people together
It's what
is
bonds
such a
people.
great
Right.
another way to look at it.
You
know
know,
what
you
I
really
mean?
want to learn who your friends are. It's really who do you sit down and eat.
Who do
meals
you eat with? Exactly.
Is really that's your friends and family, and that's something that's always been instilled in me, and that's a big deal for us growing up with my family and
Right.
my kids. Is like having big meals together and sharing this food.
That's fantastic. Okay, so the mac and cheese is just about ready. It's got a nice, beautiful golden brown color, hopefully. Let's go check that out. What do you think?
That's beautiful. That's it.
So that's what you're looking for. You want to get that nice caramelization there on the mac and cheese itself,
That's it.
just like Mom used to make.
Exactly.
Do you have any kids?
I do. So
Because this totally seems like a kid food. I feel like we went this whole show
my kids love mac and
and
cheese.
we didn't talk about kids, and obviously
they're,
mac
they're
and
on
cheese.
to
is-
the box mac and cheese right now.
Oh my!
And there's
Are you
different
serious?
versions.
Hold up.
But when
Did you
Mom-
just say that your kids eat box mac and cheese?
They do.
You saw how simple this was, right?
This was.
Are they going to continue to eat box mac and
So,
cheese? Or are you going to?
The funny part is when my mom makes it for an event or we have a family gathering, my brothers, we all sort of fight to whatever's left over to bring
Take home.
take home with ourselves. So
Right.
whoever's hosting like tries to keep it.
You know what? I'm
'Cause,
gonna.
you can make it on your own, but it's still not like mom's.
I was just gonna say I might want to take. You know what? Keep serving them box mac and because
Right,
you're gonna.
right.
If you did this all the time, then your kids it would diminish your mom's mac and
They
cheese,
might
right?
not ever eat another mac and cheese again because they would.
But
complain it's
then
not
when
mom's.
your mom brings the mac and cheese, it'd be like, oh, it's just mac and cheese
Right.
because they eat it already and you already
That's
make
true.
it and stuff. So maybe
Right.
maybe it's better, for your mom that you just keep feeding them box mac and cheese and.
This is true.
You ready to try some?
Yeah.
So we get a whole square.
Yeah, basically, that's kind of what we look at. Some like a square. Not perfect. It's awesome. Thank
I
you.
had 2 plates, I think. If not, then we're gonna have to share a plate. Oh, thank goodness. Because I'm not
That's
big
what
on
bonds us, right?
the food itself bonds us, but I'm not big on sharing food. Like it's my food. There's only so much here, right? Okay, so you probably want a fork, right?
Yes.
It looks beautiful. I love the way it coats the macaroni the way it does.
Yeah,
and
it
it
does.
does. This is like a whole separate piece here, this cheese top. So you don't eat
Right.
that at first.
So I flip it over.
Oh, look at you. You flip the entire thing over. And eat it from the
And
bottom.
I eat it from the bottom.
All right, cool.
And it has this creamy texture.
That's amazing. I don't know. I would never eat box mac and cheese again.
Right.
And again, a lot of mac and cheese you see, they want to use a bit like a bechamel. So you're starting with a roux and you're like, I feel like that sounds more complicated. This was so simple.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like there's no reason to eat a box again other than, so your mom doesn't feel bad when she brings her
And this
mac
is
and
it.
cheese
It
over.
has that flavor. And
Do you ever add like bacon or something to it?
no, I've never done bacon.
I got to get some of the top because you said that was special and you had to save it for the end. And we're not going to stand here and watch me eat this entire plate.
I don't know. I might go for more.
I can't even get the top. There we go. Oh, yeah. It has a totally
And
different.
it has its whole little different flavor.
It does have a totally different flavor.
consistency.
That's amazing. Can you tell that it's mild cheese? Like you feel like there's a slight more pungency to it?
It's close. I mean, it's pretty close to what it was. I think your adjustment there with a
I'm a baker,
Yeah.
so I did the best I could. I'm
I
not
like.
mom. So I didn't ruin her mac and cheese.
Not
and
at
that's
all.
super awesome.
No, it's amazing.
All right, well,
You should be proud.
I appreciate you coming by and
Thank
bringing
you.
this recipe. This was awesome. Thanks
Appreciate
again,
it.
man.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us here on Baker Dave Presents. And a special thanks to Jonathan Latko and his mother's delicious mac and cheese recipe. Holy cow, 90 tons. Did you hear that? Join us again next time on Baker Dave Presents. And remember, every recipe has a story.